on. So yeah, welcome everybody. Good to have you here. And what we're going to do is go through a few things, which are common questions, common confusions that I see with people, and some general information. You can better manage your rights and responsibilities as providers. So my name's Gina. If you haven't met me, lovely to meet you now. I do recognize some names in here that I know, and a whole lot of names that I don't know as yet. If you haven't met me, maybe you've met one of my team, and we just haven't met yet. You might have met Alison or Sheila or Keely. So welcome to all of you. And what we're going to look at, first of all, is I think there's an enormous amount of confusion around each audit, what you can do, what you can't do, what the audit's for, what it's not for. Sometimes people are under the impression that a midterm is easy peasy. Well, it probably was 5 years ago when auditors weren't doing their job, but it has never meant to be that way. And an audit of a Division 2 by an auditor who knows what they're doing can be as rigorous and pick up as much stuff or non-conformities as any complete re-registration or certification audit. So let's get rid of some of the myths. And if you've had an easy time at audit, like you've had non-conformities, but they haven't been picked up, it's because you've had an auditor that just couldn't be bothered, doesn't know, or didn't look. And with things like that, your luck can really run out. And there are some auditors who have become incredibly complacent. And as a result of that, the Commission will crack down on that. And they will crack down on by way of cracking down on the audit companies via the regulator of the audit companies, which their name is JASANS. So just give me a second because I seem to have developed a bit of an allergy. I'm just going to... Sorry about that. Allergies at the beginning of a season are just horrific for me, unfortunately. I'm so sensitive. Okay, so by way of a show of hands, I mean, I do know some of the names in this audience. By way of a show of hands, who is going for their very first audit? Okay, so you never had an audit before. This is your first one. And I can't really see any hands. I know a lot of people don't know how to use the hand gestures, but some do. Thank you.
Not really. So I probably participated in one, but I was working on the floor. Not
Okay. So yeah.
just in the
But you've not actually been the owner or the manager taking it through an audit yet. Okay,
no.
lovely.
So it's gonna be
Just
the first time.
getting a sense of who's never been to audit yet. Okay, lovely. Thank you. All right. Let's just kick off then. And I know that even if it was your fourth audit, first of all, if you were really, really confident at audits, you probably wouldn't be here. So I'm going to make an assumed decision that, we'll just start with everything. And it doesn't hurt if you've already learned some of these things. It's just relearning. So let's go sharing my little PowerPoint. All righty. Just give me a thumbs up, anyone at all, to let me know that that PowerPoint is actually sitting there. A
Yes,
nod of the
please.
head will do. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's not uncommon for me to be speaking for 20 minutes and have forgotten to share the PowerPoint. So rather than do that, let's have a chat about the audit types. Okay, and And there's a few reasons why I want to do this. Number one, because I think you should know. Number two, because you're not empowered if you don't know. Number three, those auditors, some of them are mean, and I was one. I don't believe I was a mean one. I think I was a really reasonable one. But I will tell you that auditing NDIS provider after NDIS provider, you can get pretty cranky. And if you're a bit prone to being not a nice person, that's where it comes out in people. So you will meet some auditors that are fed up and burned out, and they will treat you badly. And none of that's okay. So there's different types of audits under the NDIS quality and safety standards. You have your provisional. Provisional is you don't have any clients. So provisional isn't just the first one that you have before you even start business. Provisional could be you're going back for your re-registration audit, but there are two modules that you've never delivered services under. So you will have what's called a partial provisional, and the other part will be certification. So provisional refers to not having any clients. If we can't certify the service delivery that you're doing in a particular registration group or module, then that becomes provisional, not the entire audit. But let's say you're registered for module 1, module 2A, the core, you're delivering services under core, great, we'll do certification audit. But you haven't delivered any services at all under module 1 or module 2A, then that audit means that in that audit, module 1 and module 2A are going to be provisional, even though core is going to be certification. So provisional can be the entire audit when you've never done anything at all, or it could be partial because there are some services modules that you've not delivered, okay? So understanding that it can be a hybrid as well as black and white, could be certification or provisional, or it could be partial. Certification audit is the opposite of that. It means we're certifying. You've had your provisional. We're going to now come back at a later date and certify that you are doing implementation the way it is meant to be done within the standards, which are then operationalized into your policies and procedures. So if you think about it too, you've got a set of quality and safety standards that you have to deliver services in accordance with. Your policies and procedures purely operationalize that, okay? Make it possible for you to deliver services in alignment with those by operationalizing it. Right. I've covered off on a combination of the two, as I just said, gave you a case, use a case for that. Your midterm audit. Your midterm audit is within the core module, there are 4 divisions: Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, Division 4. Division 2 of the core module is governance. A midterm audit is governance, okay? It's the entire module. But what I want you to remember and not get too complacent about is that I have seen the biggest non-conformities come from a midterm audit that have reached their tentacles into every other module within the core and the module 1 and the module 2, Ray, and everything else. So please don't be complacent and and think that just because it's only division 2 that you can't that you can sort of sit back and not bother to get it all together to 99% in alignment with the standards, because if you've got a half decent auditor, they will pick you up on it. So how does that happen on a midterm, you might think? If people are only looking at module 2, division 2, and that's, human resources, quality improvement, complaints, incidents, information management, governance and operational management. How does that happen there? Well, it happens because those very specific topics that are put into Division 2, the governance division, are put in there because they all have tentacles that reach out to every other part of your business. That's why they're in governance. Governance is governing. Governance is overseeing. Governance is then oversight. So these modules were specifically chosen to go inside Division 2 because they have the ability to be able to reach into every other part of your business. And that's why at midterm, doing a Division 2, if you're a lazy auditor, they'll find very little except for what's right in front of their eyes. But more and more the auditors are picking up their game and doing their job properly. And hence why, 2 or 3 years ago now, 2 years ago, one provider came to me. They'd had a midterm and they were put into a 3-month review cycle. I'm surprised they weren't suspended, to be honest, because of all of the non-conformities that were found. And that happened because they looked at incident as a governance topic. But when you go in and you look at someone's incident register or their handling of incidents, you're then obliged to go, well, show me that incident then, if you wouldn't mind. And there were no forms. No one had filled out any incident forms. Nobody had done any mini investigations or root cause. Nobody reported things to the commission where there was touching staff members, touching clients, or the use of restrictive practice without authorization. That just blew up. And this was one of the largest remediations that I'd ever had to help an organisation get through. So please don't think that a midterm is easy peasy. It's only easy peasy if you've got everything in place that should be in place, or you have an auditor that doesn't care, doesn't know what they're doing, or a combination of both. Next is your conditional audit. Does anyone want to have a stab at telling me what a conditional audit is? No takers? Oh,
Um, Honestly, I don't really have an idea, but
that's okay. You don't have to know.
conditional. Yeah,
If
I
you,
would assume that probably it might just be prior to your actual audit,
no,
maybe auditors.
no, good try and good on you for having a go because like everybody else has stepped backwards. So good on you for stepping forwards. A conditional audit is when you get registered, when you go for a provisional registration, it's your first one, and you've got your registration and it says, good on you, congratulations, you've got provisional registration as an NDIS provider on this, and this. Yep. What was meant to happen and didn't happen until people started dying and getting into trouble was they were meant to do a conditional audit 3 months after you started delivering a service. So the conditional audit would be triggered or should have been triggered by a company billing for a service. That should have triggered the commission to do a conditional audit. But they, commission-wise, they lost the plot. They lost the plot a long time ago. That horse bolted out of their gate a very long time ago, and they continued to accept phenomenal numbers of NDIS providers into the market, even given that I never saw one conditional audit being done as a consultant for the first 3-4 years of my consulting in NDIS. Not one. I am starting to see conditional audits being done now. I'm starting to see letters going out to people now. I know that because people are coming and saying, what is this? That's a very long time. They brought these more robust standards. I wouldn't say they're robust. I'd just say they're more robust than the four standards that they had before this. They brought this in the 1st of July, 2019. And it's only been in the last 8-9 months, maybe, that I've been seeing people having conditional audits. So that's a really big CEOs in the private sector would be sacked for that. You know, people would be jailed. People would be held to account for that. So I did not see any conditional audits because I've got hundreds of NDIS provider clients. I didn't see any. And quite frankly, in those first 3 years when I was still doing commission audits, I never did a conditional audit. So although that's all circumstantial evidence, it's pretty compelling evidence that there weren't any until I started seeing people come to me and go, "What's this letter? I don't understand." And that just made me happy. But it's bittersweet because, they should have been doing their job in the first place. And there are many a time where I've had conversations with them and said, they go, "Oh, rest assured, Gina, we're cracking down on these providers." And I went, "I'm not blaming the providers, I'm blaming you. You just keep opening that gate. You just don't even shut it for 5 minutes. People are just continuing to come in. And yeah, I blame them. I think that there are some poor providers in the market, but I think that if a system lets you in, it's the system that is at fault in the first instance. So that's your conditional audit. You should get it after you have been provisionally approved, and then you start delivering a service and you bill for it. What I'm also seeing is that people are being sent that letter 3 months after they're registered and they haven't delivered a service, and they're going, "Well, what the hell?" And it's like, yeah, you'd expect that. There's nothing to audit. You just have to tell the commission, "I'm not doing anything." So if that's happening to you, you just say, "I haven't delivered a service yet, so you can't conditionally audit me because there's nothing to see. You've got nothing to certify." So I think if more people were aware of that, you would have better idea of your rights, a better idea of your responsibilities and your obligations, which are all tied in together, and not be bullied around by the commission so much. Who, quite frankly, at the top, of course, they have some idea of what they're doing, but as it trickles down to the people that you probably speak to on the phone and via email, not so much. A lot of it is just narrative that they're taught. They've not been around. Some might have. There are exceptions to that. And then, of course, you've got your final, we go through that whole cycle, your final re-registration. So you've gone provisional audit. Let's say you've gone up until about 9 months ago, you'd go provisional audit, midterm audit, re-registration audit. More often than not now, we're seeing provisional audit, conditional audit, because you've triggered a service, or they've just sent you a letter and you haven't known what to do, and you've gone, "Yeah, sure, okay, let's have an audit," and there's nothing to audit. So more often we're seeing provisional audit, conditional audit, and then re-registration audit. Okay, so that's what those audits are about. And then the dreaded 90-day review cycle. Does anyone remember when I said the 90-day review cycle would be triggered? It should have the skull and crossbone on it because it's the thing you want to stay away from. When you've had an audit, be it won't be so much provisional because you won't have made so many mistakes when you haven't got any clients. When you've had a certification audit or a midterm audit or even a conditional audit, and there are so many major non-conformities, whether that be by virtue of the fact that you've had 3 or more minors in one practice standard, which will then become a major, or whether you've just had flat out a lot of majors, and they can't be fixed in one day. A reasonable auditor, and I want you to remember this, a reasonable auditor behaving in a reasonable manner will allow you to fix those non-conformities if they're fixable by end of or close of business or by the next day. They're just thinking about their own, disruption to their own business. A reasonable auditor will let you fix those non-conformities, those majors, because you cannot close out an audit until there's no major non-conformities left. So when there are so many that it is impossible to fix them in a day, or the nature of the non-conformity does not lend itself to being able to be fixed in even a week, because there are some major systemic issues that will take, for example, staff aren't trained in XYZ. You've got 100 staff, you're 50 staff, you're never going to get that done in one day. There's no way that can be closed out. There's no way that can be fixed in that day or that day and a half. Or I've even known people to, give some people a couple of days. They're probably not allowed to, but they've been kind. But so so the fact of the matter is that when they can't be fixed in a very quick period of time, you have to go into a 90-day review cycle. And then there have been I've had many people come to me with oh my God, we've been put into this. What does it all mean? And then, we've worked through that in that 90-day period to sort it out. There was one particular case where that person, not with the work that we'd remediated, but in starting another, like in doing another incident, they didn't fill it out the way that I had trained them to. And when the auditor came back, they found a new incident that they hadn't responded to in the manner that we had responded to the others with. And she went, mate, you got another one. Like, it's interesting. So some people, it takes a long time to learn. Quite honestly, some people shouldn't be in the industry. But anyway, they did allow, what did they do? I think they can be very reasonable. They gave him a week. And at that point, I was exhausted from that person, and I found somebody closer to them, because we're a different state in different states. And I found a colleague of mine, very strict auditor as well. And I put him in her hands, and it really tired her out, just like it tired me out. But, he's a better provider for it. And I guess our heart's in it. But I do think that some people quite possibly shouldn't be NDIS providers or aged care providers. So any questions on the nature and classification of audit types and the information that I've given you about them? No? What I want you to know in terms of your own rights, because what I see is the audit companies, there used to be, when I was auditing, there was about 14 of them. I think there's probably about 40. So they've seen a very lucrative market, and everyone's jumped in, which is what happens in a market. What I want you to know is that they're going to ring you up. It's a bit like, I used to be a dental practitioner, and it was the job of the practice manager to make sure that the bookings were always coming through, right? So they would ring people up, get them back for their 6-month checkup or whatever it is that they were coming for, just to make sure that the work was always there in the book. Make no mistake, that is what the audit companies are doing. So they will monitor if you've gone to them for an audit, they will then monitor you because they want you back, they want your money, and they will ring you up or send you an email and tell you your audit's due, blah, blah, blah. Let's make a time. Some of them will try to make a time for your audit 6 months before your audit is due. Say no, unless there's something in it for you. Some of them will say that you have to make the time by the audit date that's in the portal. That is not true. You only have to have booked your audit by the time the midterm audit says it's due. So in your portal, there'll be a date. It will say midterm due X. You only have to have made the booking with the company. The audit could be a month after that. Okay. With permission, actually, it could even be 3 months after that. Once it gets a little bit more than that, you start to get into tiger country, if you like, and you would ask permission, but it still can be done. There are things that happen in people's worlds that make it hard for them to get to things at times. With permission, you can postpone that. Now, when it comes to your re-registration audit, that's a bit different, because the re-registration is happening because your registration is about to expire, right? So you can't just automatically say, No, I'll have my audit in 2 months from that date. As long as I book it from that date, it'll be fine. No, because it's re-registration. Your registration will have expired. But what you can do, if, for example, and here's the most common reason why, if you have not done your internal audit by the time you're going to re-registration or midterm, then you can write a letter to the commission, hound them until they answer you. And all you're looking for from them is, yes, fine, you can have a extension. Could you please just show us that appointment in the portal? And so that means what you have to do next is say, okay, here you go, audit company. I've got my letter. Then they'll book. So then the audit company do an appointment in the portal, and then you write back to the commission and say, it's happened. Please check the portal. My audit is booked for 3 months from now. So that's how you get the extension. If you listen to the audit company, they will tell you you can't, because all they want is a bum on a seat. All they want is your money in their pocket, and they will not go to any trouble to help you get an extension of any kind. So you need to know your rights around that. And I would say that 80% of people who come to us for internal audits, we tell them straight away, their audit's due in a month or 6 weeks. We say, I can almost 99.9% repeater tell you that you will not have time to fix your non-conformities. So let's start the letter now and ask for an extension. Now, the ones who don't come to us for an internal audit, or any other company for an internal audit, they're usually the ones that go into that 90-day review cycle because they didn't do an internal audit. Number one, that is a standard major non-conformity in itself that you can't fix in a day. Yeah. Number two, they've had so many other non-conformities that there was no possible way any of those could have been fixed. So number one, you don't want to go to audit and have all those non-conformities, because you are simply going to have to pay for another audit, which will cost you the same as the first one, just about, not too far from, which is probably around $3,000. They don't work for under $1,600 a day. So you're not getting out of it for under that. Whereas you should have just spent the money on getting an internal auditor to come in and do your internal audit, which then ticks the standard on the internal audit, kicks the standard on having quality improvement system, because most of us that do internal audits give you a quality action plan. Number three, you will learn everything that you haven't done properly. Number four, your business understanding of what you're doing and your staff's understanding of what you're doing, of what they're doing, will improve out of sight. That's the idea. The opposite, of course, is you're going into that 90-day review cycle. You're going to have to probably go and engage a consultant to help you, because 90% of people do not understand how to manage that. And you're just going to pay even more money. So if it comes down to a money thing, prevention is better than the cure. Sure, it's going to cost you $3,500 to have an internal audit with anyone like us. There are other companies that do it. But it's not going to be less than that. But your 90-day review cycle audit and the embarrassment of that, plus it stays on your record. Plus, they're going to start, the commission are going down the aged care path. They're going to start making it obvious on the websites when people have outstanding non-conformities. And they will hopefully start reporting when people have been put into a 90-day review cycle, so that customers can tell who they're going to. They can make informed decisions about the people that they're going to be working with. Okay, so there seems to be no questions on that. We'll move on. And then we've got the simple verification audit. I couldn't leave that out. A verification audit is just like plan management or transport, or it's just the 4 standards, which is the 3-year registration, no midterm. It's for low risk services only. So that's fairly easy. So that's your audit framework, and the meat and the sandwich of the audit, and the things that you need to know to keep yourself and your business safe, rather than getting stuck in these situations of, you know, booking a conditional audit when you've not even taken a client. Sometimes people have had that letter. Can you turn? Oh, sorry. Sometimes people have yeah, had that letter, 12 weeks to the day from receiving their registration, and they just don't have a client. So just be careful about that. With your provisional means you've got, clients. I've already talked through those. So yeah, remember, certification is another word for that's witnessing. So that's what certification means. We're witnessing something. If there's nothing there, we can't witness it. We have done these. 90-day, we've done verification audit. Okie dokie. So that's the talk about our audit types. Okay. The other thing that I want to say to you about the auditor, when they tell you you've got a non-conformity, if they haven't already said to you, this is what it is and where it is in the standards, please ask them to point out to you whereabouts in the practice standard that non-conformity is, because some of them will tell you that you have a non-conformity, but actually it's just something that they think that you should do. So if if you have enough confidence, ask them, which practice standard is that? Could you just tell me exactly where that is? Because we've seen non-conformities that really aren't non-conformities, they're just opinions. So I just see if there might be a couple of comments here. How long would it take to get the report from the Commission on your re-registration audit? How long is a piece of string? Some people's aren't coming back until their next midterm. Some people's midterms are being extended out because they haven't got their re-registration completed. Sometimes someone's come back in 3 months. There's no rhyme or reason. You've gone through the internal audit but they didn't let you know some gaps, and the main auditor noticed it was not on the major non-conformity, though. Should the provider need to let the internal auditor know about it? At the moment that they told you that there were, did you get a company, Ritu? Did you get a company to do the internal audit? You should have spoken to them right then and there, because they would have been able to fix it for you. That's their job. We're very strict with internal audits, and that's the absolute reason why, is because sometimes the auditors will pick things up, other times they won't. But if we don't have, what's the word, a 100% a 100% vision of aligning to the standards, exactly the same thing that you're just describing could happen to us. So yes, it feels over the top, but we can't have you going to audit and having our reputation tarnished. But we always say, call us the moment they tell you that. And that's exactly what you should have done, or maybe you did. Let me look at the messages. Yeah, they should have fixed it for you on the spot. And yeah, that's why we are over the top. Got to be. It's harder being an internal audit company than it was being a commission auditor, because nobody's really checking your work. Sure, they have a technical review officer, but they're not there on the day, finding things. The only thing a technical review officer at an audit company can do is look at what evidence has been provided and look at, that form or policy against the standards. They're not there when, when they're being interviewed and etc., or looking in the software systems. So yeah, bummer. Okay. So the next item on here is, so that brings me to your internal audit. If you are certification level, which means you're not verification, you absolutely need to have an internal audit at some point, whether you do it annually or whether you just do it before each audit. That's completely up to you. The standards doesn't say it should be annual or biannual or quarterly, or it doesn't say any of that, but it does say that an internal audit is is completed. I know that there are just a few people, a small percentage of providers who can actually conduct their own internal audits. The majority of providers in the market don't know how, and they don't have the skill to do an internal audit and be sure that that internal audit has interpreted the standards correctly. So that's why a lot of people outsource it. But just be really clear, if you know, if the 142 people who registered for this are watching this at a later date, the people who aren't here now, don't be complacent about not having an internal audit. A, it is the right thing to do. B, it's required under your standards. And C, if you don't, you could end up in a 90-day review cycle, which isn't fun, and it is recorded on your record by the commission. Did you know that this was developed? The commission was developed based on a risk framework, which means that the idea was, this is hilarious. It's hilarious in this market. The idea was if you would get 2 audits in a row without, or maybe even 3, might have been 1, 2, and 3. If you got no non-conformities in either 2 or 3 audits in a row, you would miss that midterm. That was the reward because it was based on a risk framework. Risk-based auditing, I don't know that anyone, even since 2019, has actually hit that mark. And I don't think it was even possible in this market. So I think it was very, very not aligned to the market of providers that we have. But yeah, that was its idea. So Sharon says, so if you're just a sole trader, support coordinator, do you still need an internal audit? The standards at this point, we know that the standards do not, the first thing I noticed about the standards was that they don't really, they're not appropriate for the services. So I'm the first one to tell you that the core module is just ridiculous and it doesn't cater for support coordination, but support coordination is in there. Yeah, so I'd be the first one to tell you that I don't think that they're appropriate, but at the same time, we're stuck with it. And the answer is yes, because the core module says internal audit. At this point, before the standards are changed, and they will be, thank God, you have no choice but to have done an internal audit. And I have lots of support coordination companies that come for those audits. I know it just doesn't seem quite right, but I honestly, in all honesty, as a person of 35 years experience across health and human services and audits, I wouldn't be stopping support coordinators having audits. I would be changing the practice standards so that they actually are more relevant to a support coordinator, but the internal audit one I would not be taking out, because I think we have a percentage rating on our internal audit. There's 100%, and then obviously there's all the other percentages under that, and it's not uncommon to have support coordinators sitting at like 60 or 70% after their internal audit. So they don't get it right. Like, doesn't mean you're not good support coordinators at all, but we've got, what's our metric? Our metric is these standards, and against those standards is, it doesn't matter that I know XYZ support coordinator company in WA, they're fantastic. I'd send my family to them, but do they align to the standards because that's what our metric is, that's what our benchmark is. And when the answer is no, they still have to fix it to get there. It's hard to get the documents signed by the parent or caregivers. Would it be possible to add into the documents telephonically consent? Look, the thing is that you can have, you know, person wouldn't sign, person refused to sign, person incapable of signing, email consent that's come from a guardian, all that sort of thing, and you add it to the thing. It's not like it's been very, very tunnel vision to think only a signature will and a date will do. But the fact is that when people start abusing that, yeah, okay, no, you don't have to. You can give us an email or you can say refuse to sign. But when it gets to the point where we're auditing and 20 people have refused to sign, we start to ask questions because that's just not possible. So yes, you can do that. There's always been the ability to be able to say person is unable to sign and then you sign off for them. Or people include emails and things like that. But when you're having a telephone conversation, try to get that in an email and save the email because it's not good evidence. As I say, it's okay when it happens occasionally, but if every single client in one provider's plethora of clients said couldn't sign, we'd think there's something going on that you just couldn't be bothered getting them to sign. Well, I get that it's grey area, but there's always been the ability to have, case notes in there saying that they couldn't sign. But we start to see a pattern if every single person you have can't sign. So they're just, you just think of innovative ways around it. If they can't sign, they can't sign. But if every single person does that, then I'd be asking yourself questions like, that's just not possible, or you're not making it possible, or yeah. Just put your critical reasoning hat on and be innovative. Right. So our next topic was organizing your information. So I've always known that having a data information repository, A, gives you governance oversight, B, gives you quality oversight, C, gives you risk oversight, D, gives you oversight in general of what's going on operationally and clinically. And I've known that it takes, a good one can take a half a day off an audit. But I just heard at a network meeting a few days ago, two of my own clients were there, and one of them said that their re-registration audit took 2 hours, 2.5 hours, because they used that same client management system that I have. And the other one sitting opposite them said, yeah, ours was 3.5 hours, because all the information's in one place. Because I got to tell you, as much as I am on the provider's side, and I don't like auditors that are nasty or don't know what they're doing or don't even belong in the sector themselves. It is very frustrating. It is really awful when people throw information at you. It is really annoying. And to think that there are some people that go, here's a drive, go through it. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to ask you to find it. And there are many, many clients who do that and did it for when I was commission auditor as well. It would be exhausting. So no, we don't like it. It isn't a good look. We know you don't know what you're doing. We know you don't actually care or have any respect for the process. There's all those things you got to remember that are going through the auditor's head from the moment we're having our first email with you or phone call or whatever it is. We're collecting information because that's our job. That's what we do. And so the more that you can look organized, the more we're going to think you're organized. And the easier our job is going to be. And of course, because everyone's human, of course, they're going to be in a better mood. because you're not making them do work that they really don't want to do. So let me show you one way of organizing your information. And you may have something similar. You may have a hybrid of using some software, and then there's a spillover of that. So I've never seen a software collect 100% of the compliance obligations or quality obligations of an organization. I have seen at best 70%, and that is confirmed by even those people sitting at the table that day, that they
Gina, you're just sharing the PowerPoint if you've got the Excel up, just so you're aware.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll reshare. I'll just open this up. Thanks, Ali. What a little angel. Just going to the compliance register. So I just want to show you an example of something that is a data, well, what's called a compliance management system. It's really a quality and compliance management system rather than just a compliance system.
We can still just see the PowerPoint.
I know, I'm a bit slow. Here we go.
Sorry, it flickered on and off, so I thought maybe you'd tried to change it.
Oh, I really appreciate you telling me, because it's nothing worse than sometimes getting 15 minutes through, and I have done it a few times. So I really appreciate it. This is an example of let me see if there's a message in there. Oh, thanks, Ritu. Yeah, everybody loves my compliance registers. I love it. I dream about it. This is something really good for organizing documents. It's just something that I've done for years and years and years since I first started in quality standards in about 2004. And I've designed this one to work for the NDIS. And this is the one that people are talking about that takes that their re-registrations only took a couple of hours, as opposed to the day and a half or 2 days that they would have been allotted. Because if you can capture everything and sort it and put it in the right place, the work is done. Now, I also want to warn you that there's a lot of software companies that will tell you they can do everything. I am yet to see one. We are still looking at softwares when we're internal auditing, and we have still not seen anything that can do everything. And when we say everything, I mean, you've got rostering and you've got this and you've got that, and the quality compliance. No, we haven't seen one that does it, but they will all tell you that. And I meet people who have been suckered into going in with them, and then they find out it actually doesn't do that. I'll tell you, they will tell you it makes you a cup of tea in the morning if you will buy it and sign up to it. So please be very careful about what they tell you it will do, and what it won't do, the softwares I'm talking about. So I find that there's some great softwares, and then there's a spillover, and people need some sort of a system like this or similar to catch the spillover. Okay. So on this is a data information capturing device. There isn't anything in the NDIS it doesn't capture. Of course, it doesn't do rostering. It's not a software. But every other topic under here aligns to the standards. So when people do complete this to its fullest, according to your registration modules, etc., and what you do, they come out of an audit incredibly well. Also, I have found it is the best learning tool. It teaches people and fills the gaps in their knowledge, and then in their practice and in their understanding as they do it. So it's one of the best learning tools ever. And it just allows you to be able to come to one source of truth where you can see everything. The reason being, for example, you've got corporate risk register. That's nothing new. Lots of people make corporate risk registers, I know. But then we also have participant risk. So that's corporate. We have one for participant risk. This is organized into colors because when we have a new provider who's going into their first audit as a registration, and they've got no clients, all the orange, all that means is that that's for provisional providers and all the rest is for certification providers. That means they've got clients. So if we're going down here and we're looking for participant risk, which I will find at some point, it must be, well, there's a client prioritization. Actually, that's a real beauty.
Which one were you looking for, sorry?
Is that you, Ali?
Yes.
Which one is it?
Which one were you looking for?
Oh, participant risk.
Yes, it's number 26. You're just underneath it, client prioritization, and then one
So
down.
clever, aren't you? And I'm so not. Okay. So the reason I want to show you governance and oversight, this is clinical governance and oversight of what's going on. And it's great. You know, it's a really good day when we find that people have done a client risk assessment. That's a good day, isn't it, Ali? Right? So we're having a good audit when someone's done a participant risk. But then we want the day to get better and we want to see that they're managing that risk and they've got oversight of it. And we often don't find it. And that can be done through some softwares will allow you to put in a review date somewhere to get reminded. And that closes the loop on quality and compliance, right? Where there is no date reminder of any nature anywhere throughout the organization for when that client's risk needs to be reviewed, then that's a non-conformity because you haven't closed the loop. Therefore, the system is broken. Okay. So some people will use the software that they have to record the date that person's risk needs to be reviewed, and others need to do it manually because their software doesn't do it. So as long as it's done, so I'd say the most important thing in organizing your information are the dates for review of so many things. We need dates for review on your risk registers, on your policies, on your insurances, vehicle insurances, registrations, licenses. So if you don't have that software system that does that, and not everyone does, then you need something to show that you've got a system in place. And that's what this is about, organizing your information in a manner which shows that you've got risk managed, quality managed, information managed, you know, and underneath that we've got participant risk and staff onboarding, etc. So we're showing that we've managed our data and our information. And the main point of this is governance. So the governance, risk and compliance, I would say governance first, because you've got oversight like a helicopter. Governance managed, risk managed, quality and compliance managed. Okay, so that's the point of having a system like this. Now I'm just going to go back to the chat because there's a few things coming in. I really like compliance register. Thank you, Ritu. Is it worth signing up for shift care software and does it help with compliance? You know, I think it has its, Kevin, it has its areas where it can help, but it doesn't do everything. So we have people who use shift care and this. So it isn't one that does the 70%. But there could be, I'll open it up to, because there's a ton of people in here, so I'll open it up to other people. But I suppose you've got to have the knowledge also to know, well, you know, if someone is going to say shift care is great, but they haven't got their quality managed, that's probably not a helpful comment. But we work with people who use shift care, Brevity. Ali, are you still there?
Yes.
Flow Logic. What are the other softwares that our people use and they still use this?
Vigo, I think it was. Just someone in the chat, Brody, has just said we've found shift care has limitations and moving away. Yeah, with the softwares, it will depend on what you're using it for. So there are ones that are more client-based, and there are ones that are more HR-based. So
Yes,
it depends on sort of what you want it for. But compliance-based, it seems like there's a bit of a gap
in all of them. Even in Flow Logic, which has got some really special things, but it's expensive. Even with Flow Logic and with two really good, smart users of Flow Logic. They still use this. They're waiting for this. We're about to second week in January, we've built a software on this Excel spreadsheet. It's going to beta testing for 1 month, and then it will be available because we just want to see obviously see how it plays with 3 of our clients, and then it's going to go straight to market. So if this is of any interest to you, I want you to we'll send you a link if you want to sign up for the first demo that comes when it goes into the market. But I don't know, Ritu, you might be a bit excited. This is being turned into a software because this is the only thing that covers all compliance and quality matters for NDIS providers according to the standards. I've sort of told you what great outcomes it brings even in its manual form, and we're a little bit excited about it being a software. A little bit nervous because it's our baby, what people are going to say about it. But yeah, but it's it's been a 2-year journey for me and 1 year in building it with Ali, so and a developer. So we're really excited because what I really want to see is there has to be a better way than with all these softwares that people say, oh yeah, it does everything, make you a cup of tea, hang your washing out. There has to be a better way. I mean, there has to be a software that can manage every compliance responsibility, and this does. And now we've made the software do that. So all we wanted was for this to be automated. I just wanted people to get emails. I wanted people to have reports and notifications and all that sort of thing. So anyway, you need back to, I'll just go to the questions too in a second, but you need a data information repository of some kind, whether you've made your own, whether you use something else. So we go, where was I? Of course, you can buy this from us, absolutely. And we got a 40% off special at the moment, just until the 7th of January.
We'll be sending out a
Imran.
link after this event, just so you know. We'll send out all the
We'll send you
information
a
via
link.
the email.
Thanks, Ritu, for saying you really like it. Is it worth signing up for ShiftCare? I think we've done that one. Imran, I would like to know why the asset list is important for the audit. Okay, and any business that runs should have a list of their assets, okay? Now, when you're government funded, as I was most of my career before the NDIS came out, and it's still government funds, make no mistake, we were under standards that were actually much stricter than these standards, which are very loose fitting as a set of standards. And our assets, because we're spending taxpayer money, had to be recorded. We had to show when they were, obviously depreciation's one thing, but we had to show when they were retired and how they were retired. It's taxpayers' money. Now, I don't know when NDIS commission or the NDIA is going to come to the party and start putting asset lists in governance. Unfortunately, if the word's not there, people don't pay any attention. But let's face it, everyone, we're dealing with taxpayers' money. We need an asset list. And even if you would, why would you not have an asset list? Why would you not? You've got assets, mobile phones, laptops, equipment, plant equipment, cars. It's just good practicing. That's what we call good governance. Now, if you said to me, will it make me have one here in the standards? I'll say no, but it's taxpayer money and it should, and it will. I believe they'll wake up to themselves when the new standards are being, collaborated on at the moment. So I'm going to put it down to good governance, okay? Let me tell you a user case. When I was running organizations, when I was down on more on the floor than CEO as manager, mobile phones went walking. You know that? And we had to write down which ones, what number, what the name serial numbers were, etc., etc. And when our statements were audited, if we didn't have that, we'd be in so much trouble. We wouldn't be able to get through our audited statements. Not-for-profits had to be audited. So I carry it over from a good governance training, playground that I came from. It's good governance. Sharon, I've answered. Ritu, do we have staff risk register as well as along with well, you do in a sense. It's not called staff risk register. What we have are all of the registers that collect your and manage the obligations of your staff, which would be you've got training, you've got all their HR credentials and their screening credentials and their insurance credentials, their registrations, licenses, etc. So it's done through a few registers. When it goes to our software, it'll all be in the one, will it, Ellie? Pretty much.
The risks of all the.
Well, staff. Is staff all in one or is it spread out across a couple?
No, we've spread it out. There's about 6
Yeah.
staff registers, I think.
That's how people like it, yeah. So number 26. Oh, are you referring to a register?
That was the one you were looking for.
All right. Sorry. Oh God, I'm an idiot. Okay. Sorry. We found shift care to have limitations. Got it. Can you please demonstrate how to fill in the support plan review? Probably not here, Imran. This is more in general. Can you, if you could watch the video, it probably talks about that. But can you please demonstrate how to fill in the support plan review? It's so simple. It is date that it needs review. Whatever the other information is, just place it in there. And then it's the date for review that is more important than anything else because that closes the loop on quality and compliance. So if I have time, I'll come back to that. Is this spreadsheet? Oh God. Can you please email us where to get this compliance spreadsheet? Yes, Slack's incident management too. Oh, does it really, Brody? Bugger. Ali and I see the most amazing things in software where they don't even have the ability to make it reportable. Like one of your standards say you must be able to delineate and show that whether one's reportable or not reportable. And why the software companies have not cottoned onto that is beyond me. Shift care is just a kind way of technology integration. We have a brevity. Yep. Oh, that's all. That's good. I agree. Shift care is not worth it. Happy to sign up for the demo. Oh, that's good. Query regarding incident reports. If a participant soils themselves regularly and staff required to support participant, is an incident report required? There would be nothing to say that that's an incident, but it doesn't hurt to make one. Do you know what I mean? Like you can really, if you want to show the instances and the incidences of that happening, it's not a bad way to do it. Remember the definition for incident is quite loose. Reportable incident is quite tight. So you are more than welcome to use it for that because it gives you really good, and it saves you having to go to another system. So what you could do is do an incident, but create a category that is very clearly going to show and help you to report on it. So that category might be client, I don't know whether it'd be client soiling or whether you want to show that maybe you need more help. You need more help in that area, that this would help if you have a report to show, look, this person is losing skill. They're not developing skill. They're losing skills. So we need more help or more money in this area. Then definitely you could do it by that. And that's an easier way to be able to show from reporting. Just make a category that's suitable for it. Whether it might be participant, personal care, insufficiencies or something, like that. Like you'll come up with something creative and happy to talk to you about it. Anytime on the phone if you want to give us a call. I think I've answered all those questions. So we've come to organizing your information. Now I'm aware that it's been 1 hour and 10, and I know we're not going to go 3 hours because that was when we were going to do a face-to-face, but I got so many remote people wanting to do it that I took it out of the face-to-face option and put it here. So because we're not face-to-face, nothing takes as long when you're not face-to-face. But I am aware we've been going for 1 hour and 20. Does anyone need a break to go to the loo or get a coffee?
Some hands up there. Yes.
There's some hands up. All right. By all means, go take 5 minutes, go and have a break, and then come back and I'll answer these questions while you're away. Oh, yeah, health and hygiene. What a good one. Yeah, gosh, that's good. Infectious. What am I thinking? You know, it could have been infectious, infection prevention, you know, because clearly, you know, we've got a lot of E. coli down there in feces. Definitely. Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. You have some bare minimums that you have to call incidents, but after that you can be as innovative as you like. Does a support coordinator need to complete a support plan? Yes, you do. Absolutely. Until they do some serious soul searching when they do this collaboration. And look, I'm doing my best to feed in when they put out requests for consultation on XYZ. But and Ali's attended some stuff, but I don't know that there's been anything much else said. Yes, they need a support plan, and they will need a support plan going forward as well. It should probably look different. Like, I agree, it should look different, but not terribly different, to be honest, because there's still an incredible responsibility for a support coordinator to know that information so that you're referring people with in due diligence. You know, if you don't have that information, like we've had support coordinators that we've audited, they know nothing. So that's not acceptable. So knowing that people have all of these risks, unfortunately, your gatekeeping responsibilities are even bigger. Gatekeeping responsibilities are bigger because there are providers out there who actually don't have the skill and knowledge to be doing the work they do. Can you purchase this management system on screen? Yes, absolutely you can. Okay, go and have a break. I'll go and have a 5 minute and we'll be back. I'll put my timer on. Okay. Ali, are you there?
Yes.
If we pause the recording, will
I'll
you?
remind you to turn it back on. Don't worry.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay, I'm back. Is anyone else back?
Yep. And got the recording back on?
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
All right, so we've all had a bit of a 5 minute. That's great. That's good. So what we've looked at is audit types, obligations, some of your rights, which I know a lot of people are not upholding. You're getting a lot of people get bullied by auditors. And so we've done organization, new information. So now some HR requirements. So there's a couple of ways to look at that. So someone talked about, is there a staff risk register? No. No, there's just a few things that manage staff. So when you talked about staff risk register, I mean, to me, I think, does that mean like some staff are a risk to you or more than others? Or like, did that come from somewhere, that request? Like, was there a particular situation that made you think, well, I really need a staff risk register? Because it's interesting. I'd be interested if you want to elaborate on that. But the next topic, and you can speak up anytime you want to. But the next topic is the HR requirements. And so the HR requirements are littered throughout the standards, if you like, but there is one, if you remember, I talked about Division 2 of the standards being about governance, and that there is an HR module under that. And that has, although it will only speak about, a range of HR things, it actually has the tentacles to be able to go into just about anything, because staff can be involved in anything within the organization. And that's what I meant when I said people have this complacency around Division 2. It actually has the tentacles to go into every area of service delivery, because staff are involved in every area of service delivery. Back to the chat. Oh, Ali's taking care of that. Okay. So for your HR requirements, you're required to train them. You're required to have records of that training. You're required to assess what their training needs are and whether the training that you've given is doing the job it was supposed to do. So they're your HR requirements. So how do you demonstrate that? You can demonstrate that using a training needs analysis or something similar to that. So for example, I'll show you what a training needs analysis looks like. It's something that you should do, something of this nature that you should do whenever you onboard a staff member, at times when you're doing their supervision, and when you're doing the, which folder am I looking for, Ali? Is it staff management?
Supervision?
No, I'm looking for the training needs analysis.
Yep, it's at the bottom.
Cool. So this is something or something similar to this, if done, should be done at onboarding of a staff member at different intervals, be that one would be performance appraisal, another one would be at supervision, and other times where you can see, or they've been involved in an incident, like medication incident, or an incident that is clear that knowledge is needed. Yeah. So this is your evidence for that. So what are the requirements for human resources? Well, you want evidence that you've trained, that you know what people need, you've trained them in it, and you're assessing to see that that's working for them. If not, give it to them again. So we're looking for evidence of that. We're also looking for other requirements, which are your the worker stuff. So we tend to capture that all in one go, which is, put me out of my misery, Ali. Just tell me
For
here.
the training needs, yeah, it's down there.
we tend to capture most of it in something called an HR matrix. I've seen many of similar things out there. So now sometimes your software will do it for you, but please remember that you're going to just get non-conformities if your software is, you go to audit, you're showing them your software, it's got everything in there, and then you've got all these expired dates. It's defeating the purpose. So you had review this, review that, they're all expired. We're staring down the barrel of a whole lot of compliances that have been ignored. And even if you say, oh, but I've got those documents, I don't care. I'm still going to give you a non-conformity because the system's broken. You're not using it the way it's meant to be used, because as far as we can see, they're all expired. So please be sure that if you're going to buy the bells and whistles on something, use them. Don't just, and anyway, I wouldn't believe someone if they told me that they've got all the new licenses and they've got copies of the renewals. I'd still have to look at them then. So yeah, that's a problem. Ali, if you want to check the chat, that if you're not busy. Yep. So most importantly, where there's a professional body, we have to show it. If you need working with children check, fine. But, we do know that sometimes, that can be covered in the worker screening check, but that's not enough for a lot of people. I don't think it's thorough enough. Police check, it's kind of where there's a worker screening check, doesn't really matter anymore. But we still have it in there because not everyone has a worker screening check, but you do want to do some check. Like if people are working in admin, you want to make sure that they didn't go to jail for embezzlement or something like that. That's the least you can do. So then your first aids, all these mandatory things are in here. This isn't all the sort of training that you'd like to do. This is the training that you have to have done. Yep. So we need to see those mandatories. We need to see that there are a range of documents that have been collected, and you might look at it like this. Oh, that's not the one I want. I want the 2 seconds. The training needs analysis, which I just showed you. Did I show you enough of that? So here's where it says, this is what you have to have. And then based on what that staff is going to be working with, these are the things that they need to have after that. So these things only become mandatory if they're actually working with someone who has epilepsy, if they're working with people with really complex needs, or if they're working with people who are requiring dysphagia management. All of these are mandatory as per the standards. The rest become mandatory once they engage with the clients that have those issues. Okay, so this is another HR requirement. Your next HR requirement, I was just going to the flow chart. So if you look at the flow chart for HR, you can pick out that there are some documents that talks about here. And we don't have any superfluous, like an abundance of superfluous documents in here. They're all things that they need. So that means that you need to have employee contractor agreements, employee details forms. You need to have the training needs analysis is mentioned in here as well. And their screenings, etc. So there's a range of things you need. It's probably an easier way to look at that, which is in our onboarding checklist.
There's the text process chart as well, the one at the top.
You're a legend, Alison. Web
goes through, and then there's just a question from Mark in the chat as well.
Okay, so hiring here, and you'll see if you follow the onboarding process, like we've set things up aligning to the standards. I don't really throw in a whole lot of, what Gina thinks is a really good idea, because that can get conflated. People can get confused. So I do chuck in what is required. And sometimes I can point out, well, something isn't mandatory. But if you follow this process, you will absolutely be 100% compliant with the NDIS quality and safety standards. So yeah, that is a much easier way to look at it in a checklist. Some people work really well with flowcharts. I don't mind them, but because it shows me the interrelationship and things like that. But I totally also need checklists as well. And we actually, you can turn that into a tick box thing that you sign at the bottom, because when you're saying what are the requirements, well, show me the proof. And the quickest way to show someone the proof is to have a checklist that's been done, that's been co-signed. That's just so easy. I don't know why anybody would want to do it any other way. That's not easy. So that's your HR requirements. So we want the onboarding stuff, the ongoing management of the staff, the mandatory checks and bells and whistles, document storage, which we've already covered. That compliance management system will give you the oversight of those documents and any due dates that are important. And remember, the most important thing about that document management storage is about the due dates. When have I got to action something? What are the questions, Ali?
So from Mark, we are preparing for a verified audit to do all APRA registered practitioners have to be registered with the proof body, i.e. physio APA?
Yes, absolutely. And if an auditor is doing their job, we'll check it in real time, the APRA registration, because it's not unheard of for people to, we have to do our due diligence as well. So yeah, we will check the registration is live. We can't do that with some of the other bodies, but we can with APRA.
And then Imran's asked about a form in the HR emergency procedure onboarding info. That's just to prove that you've inducted your staff into your emergency procedure. So it just goes through sort of emergency plan. You can get a signature. It's just another way you can do
Can I
it.
go back to that? Is it this one?
No, it was in the actual folder.
Oh yeah. So there's a standard, which is a sneaky little one, and we're good at finding all the sneaky little ones, because at some point there's a sneaky little clever auditor who will find it too. But there's a sneaky little one about, and it happened after people died. So we'll go back to 2019, 2020. I think it was, around that time where, there's a lot of preventable deaths occurring for NDIS participants. It's almost a national shame. But it says in there, this one little thing they decided, that would help at all, that you ensure that your staff know what your emergency procedure is. So we put it, I think, did we ever do a module on it, or did we do webinars on it and stuff like that? I think we might have done both, but we've slipped it into the process, because that's how we make sure things don't get lost. So if you're following checklists that have been made to be able to align and continue to align to the standards, you won't miss anything. But I always say to people, if you decide to cherry pick, all bets are off. Can't help you. If you're going to cherry pick what you do and what you don't do, what you don't do could be the one thing that the next auditor you see wants to see. There is a great deal of complacency with auditors. So if they see you a number of times, I think that they become complacent, and I don't know if the commissioner are awake on that. I think that auditors personally should be changed on a regular basis, because they get very comfortable with a client and they get very complacent. They get to know people's and consultant companies' documents, and that actually interferes with the quality process. So, to my mind, we got really, really good policies and forms and templates. I think they're probably up there with the best on the market, if not the best on the market. But I don't get enough quality criticism from auditors, and I think I'd like to see more, because nothing's ever perfect and everything can be improved. Any more feedback I need to.
Yeah, so then Mark, when we were talking about preparing for verified and all need to be registered, not just Agora, not all psych physios are members of the Australian Physio Associations, but they have to be registered with APRA.
Yeah. How could a physio not be registered with APRA? That's a requirement I don't understand.
Do you want me to talk?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, Gina. The question
No.
is really around, we've got about 25 allied health practitioners,
Mm.
and some of them like OTs and physios and EPs,
Yep.
and they're all registered with APRA,
Yeah.
but a couple of them aren't members of their professional bodies, like the APA. I know lots of physios who aren't registered with the APA.
No, that's just a personal thing. From a good governance, from a good practice, it would be it's you might suggest that would be a really good idea that they join, because we know what goes with the mindset of not joining, don't we? We know from experience over 30 years, well, I have only got 30 years, of watching what happens when people aren't members of professional bodies. They're not in the know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, we can't make them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But APRA's definite for sure.
But you can make them in an employment sheet.
Yeah,
That comes down to a business process, and you can say it requires membership, and you can say your job here or contract here is contingent on certain number of CPDs.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Mark. Any more, Ali? Or are you just keeping it? You're just keeping it all for yourself, all those chats?
I'm just answering some of the ones that can just be text. But Karen asked, where do we get a checklist to prepare for a midterm audit as a support coordinator? So support coordinator, if you're registered under the core, it's the same thing as a core audit. So it'd be the same checklist that you've got when you're
and if you don't have a getting ready for audit checklist, we do have one. Our new software system has a dynamic one, but we have taken it out of there and we're sort of turning it, it can be used as a non-dynamic, so one-dimensional checklist as well. We haven't decided what we'll sell that for, but if anyone wants one, it is really good, really good.
Just so after this, we're going to send out a link to all of our products and everything. So anything you're asking about, it'll be in the email. Imran, your question about the emergency and disaster process, it's also in the participant files. Where does it suit best? It's because the emergency and disaster standards require you to have explained your emergency procedure to everybody, staff, stakeholders, and participants. So it's in them both folders because everybody needs to know it. If you've got another way that you're inducting people in and got proof that you've given them the emergency and disaster procedure, you don't need to use that form. But that's why it's there.
Yeah, and that's the key word, is the evidence. So whatever, there is a few ways to skin a cat, and I don't like to say that because we love cats, but there are a few ways to do it. But sometimes, we come up with one way, and as long as you do that, there are, people who are very, very knowledgeable, and, we do meet a small percentage of providers who are incredibly knowledgeable, know their stuff, and I would trust them to go out and do it their own way. They're just they've been around, they know governance, they know compliance, they know quality, they do that sort of thing, but it's not the case for everyone. So that's why I've put together a lot of tools that guide people to do that, because a lot of people need that assistance. You don't learn this stuff in a year. When I first went into social science, it was 5 years, since, it's 5 years to consolidate the information. It takes years to learn this stuff. Yet the government thought it a good idea to open up this market to all and sundry. So with that, we have to know that there are a lot of people who don't know what they're doing. And so that's why checklists and documents and webinars and things that will guide people, that if you follow this, it will take you in the right place. If you choose to cherry pick along the way, but you don't have the knowledge to know, oh, I can pull that one out. If you don't know that whether that one is actually required in the standard or not required, well, then you're on your own. But we've done our best not to put a lot of superfluous rubbish that doesn't need to be there, but we can guarantee that, and we guarantee everything, that we can guarantee that we pretty much haven't missed a trick. But we are always open to, that's why I'm a little bit annoyed that I don't get enough feedback with my policies and procedures, because and we like going to a new audit company when one of our customers goes to a new audit company, because we get a fresh set of eyes, because that's what it's all about, is constantly improving. So yeah, so we've done HR training. Okay, so there's if I come back to this literally is under a core module, everything that is super duper mandatory. Okay, that is super duper mandatory. That's my professional description. Super duper mandatory. All of them are non-negotiables, and a few of them need to be done annually, because it says continually refreshed, right? So you know right now that if an auditor is doing their job, that if you haven't got these things in your core module, that you are going to get non-conformities if they're doing their job properly, okay? But let's just not talk about that as well. Let's think, okay, what happens if you have what happens if you have an insurance claim and you haven't given them incident management? You haven't got a leg to stand on. Nothing, not a thing. Let's say that, there was a fire and they didn't have fire drill training, emergency. You didn't have a disaster and emergency plan. Your staff weren't trained in it. You have a SIL home. You haven't got a leg to stand on. Nothing. I want to tell you, because I'm telling everyone, workers' compensation claims have gone up 700% in Australia for psychosocial. This is not physical, this is psychosocial hazard-related claims. The majority of these people will be off work for 3 and 4 times longer than anyone with a physical injury. A smaller proportion, but not small by any means, will never return to the workforce. You probably could all reach your hand out and just think, yeah, I know a person that far away from me who has a psychosocial disability and they don't work. They will not go back to the workplace. Let me tell you the other statistic that the NDIS has given us, okay? That, don't lose it, hang on, that support work is now support work is the second most dangerous occupation in Australia. Second only to, does anyone want to guess what it's second only to? Not you, Ali. You're not allowed. What do you think it's second?
This is just a guess, but no, everyone else is coming up with better guesses than mine.
Oh, come on. Say it anyway.
I was going to guess the mining industry.
Very nice. But no, but yeah, but not far from. But what have all the other ones saying, Ali?
Farming, construction, prison officers. I'm sorry, I have to duck out quickly. I'll be back very soon.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, let me look. This is fun. It's labouring. I mean, labouring's pretty dangerous, isn't it? So that's where we've got to. Now, I am all sorts of things. Like, I've got a big mouth. I'm a disruptor. I don't apologise for it. I love the NDIS, but I don't like what's happened. Look at what's happened to support work. This was not the case before the NDIS. So seriously, if anything, I'm also a good motivator. I really want to motivate you to look after your staff, because at the end of the day, do you know that first of all, they're people. Second of all, every claim is going to cost you money. And when like in the days of being a CEO of a not-for-profit and finding out that every claim was just going to cost the organization more, you start to take notice. Now it's your business. If you're working for yourself here, and there's some of you that will be and some of you that won't be, it's going to cost you money. You're like, we can make a claim, no worries, but your fee is going to go up. Yeah. And but we also got to think about the lives that we're ruining. Now, before the NDIS, there would be a few claims. There would be, but nothing like now, because, and I'll say it again, I said it in another webinar yesterday, we are working with people who are the most difficult and challenging to work with, yet we are throwing staff out to do this who have they do not have the skill, the knowledge, probably even the disposition to be able to do it. There are psychiatric nurses who find it difficult, yet we throw our most unskilled workers into the hot water. I want you to take that away with you and understand in proportion what that means. It means they need as much help as possible because they're doing a job that is difficult for a psychiatric nurse to do. I'm really good at working with difficult people, and it's still stressful for me. So imagine what it can be like for people who don't know what they're doing. You can take an average human being, and I've seen, for example, my sister 25 years ago or something got a job. She used to do riding for the disabled. She's a riding instructor, and she was good with that. She was really good with that. Then she got a job in a disability service provider. Yeah, we're really talking 25 years ago. And she worked in what we now call supported independent living home. They were just called group homes. And she was attacked and etc. And by a very large man with obviously autism, level 3, and very nonverbal and all that sort of thing. But she was so vicious about what had happened to her and how that person had done that to her. And I had been in social science for a long time, and I thought, how do you not know that you're that? I mean, number one, how do you talk about that person that way? Number two, why weren't you given training? And number three, why was a person like you, because I know my sister, ever working in that area? She has no sympathy for anybody. So, and that used to happen occasionally, yeah? Now it's happening all the time. So training, knowledge. And yeah, I'm going to plug my training management system. If you're looking for a training management system where the courses are not written in AI, because mine are not, they're written by me. I collaborate with others when the need is when I need to, and we will match any price that you come to us if you want to come to us from another training management system. I love that part of my business. In fact, 15 years ago, all I wanted to do was start an online training business, and eventually I got there. But yeah, it's so important. We are going to ruin lives, but I also love I love it when people's eyes light up when they get something. That's my special moment. So, and I know that you'll all walk away and know something today that you didn't have. And that actually is the gold for me. I just love it. I'm just going to read a question. I think part of the issue is companies not hiring the right people, for sure. You're 100% correct in terms of support work is hard, but lots of workers also think it's cruisy. Yeah, if they're the right person, yeah. And job providers aren't asking the right questions to ensure the right person is hired. Of course they're not, because I always use the 80-20, and it's not exact, but I got no real stats on it. I did, when I was doing my postgraduate, I started to collect some stats, but I for an essay I was doing, but I found that unfortunately the NDIS wasn't breaking down the categories enough, and that really stuffed my entire project. But 80% of clients, roughly, from what we see, observing the people who come to us, 80% of providers don't really know what they're doing. Now, I think that that's rising because, of course, we're educating and there's lots of consultants like myself and lots of opportunities for people. I think the education is rising. And how do I know that? Because when people aren't coming back to me after a couple of years, like I see, like I will still see people come for the occasional refresher, but you know, there are clients I've had that have had no experience in this world at all, and they would come religiously for 6 and 9 months to everything I did, and now I don't see them much, and I know they're doing well because then we'll do their internal audit, and I love that. So we just got to keep educating because you know people are getting hurt out there, and like I said with my sister, she's great with horses, but she's not great with people, and her lack of regard for probably human beings would be that she shouldn't be hired in a disability situation. But also, if you don't understand that a person with ASD who's non-verbal, if you're not really sure what that's all about, and you get hit in, yeah, it's not the right match, is it? So some people not cut out for it. So yeah, be really careful about that. But so training, really important. And look, I'll say to you what I learned. Your staff are either going to be one of two things, your asset or your liability. And the choice is yours. What you give to them is going to decide that. Now, if you know they don't have the empathy in the first place and it's unteachable to them, they're probably not in the right job. Okay. So empathy is one thing that people need to be able to work in areas like this. And if they're burnt out, look out for the signs. You know, you'll see the signs. You'll see it by the way they speak to people. You'll see it by the looks on their faces. You'll see it by the fact that they lose their cool much quicker, even if that's just, you know, grunting and huffing and all that sort of thing. So really be watching out for that because that will bring your business undone. So I think we've covered off on. Now, are there any questions around before we move on about the training? What's expected of you for training? That's good. There's not. So we've covered off on those. So participant documentation. Does anyone want to tell me what the absolute must-haves are for participants in terms of a document? You absolutely have to have service agreement. Intake isn't, see, here's the thing. Intake, until the NDIS came along, intake was really about eligibility of the person. So ask a few questions, find out if they're eligible for you by asking the most crucial questions that would deem their ineligibility. Yeah. And then move on to the next. So there's, I think the wording gets a bit confused. So I prefer to say intake being the eligibility testing stage, and that assessment being I'm taking you on board now. Okay, because I've already got your eligibility. Let me read everyone's because I got that one. Schedule of support services, absolutely. Service agreement. Everybody's in agreement at service agreement. Good to hear. Informed consent. Yeah, there has to be some consent forms there. Intake form, like I said, that is a word that we could be, well, what do we mean by that? There's nothing in about intake that's mandatory, but assessment is. So I like to separate it into, don't smother somebody with an assessment. It is so triggering. So have a form, and we've made one. I actually did one in consultation with 49 service providers where we made an intake form, which had all of the questions that they would need to ask to be able to assess eligibility. so that we can ask them, take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do it, and not put them through the it's triggering. I don't like to use the word traumatizing. I think we're overusing that too much, and convincing people to become victims that they shouldn't be. But it is triggering for some people. If you've, like, I brought up 2 children with severe ADHD, and if by the time they reach their teens, we're tired, we're losing our patience, we're tired of filling out forms, and that's how it gets for people. So that's why I say, and I'm not the only one that says it, because when I was at ADIC, Aging, Disability and Home Care, just while we were preparing the NDIS, monster that it is, we were bringing in no wrong door into New South Wales Aging, Disability and Home Care. No wrong door, one door, just one door, because people were saying how traumatized they were, how they were burnt out from looking after their children. I was in Clarence Street in the policy office, because I worked in policy towards the end of my government career, and we had a lady come in. She had a son, and when he turned 8, when he got to 18, he was ASD, nonverbal. He was 3 times the size of her. She had been asking for help for so long. She came into the office. She said, "I'm going to kill myself if you don't take my son into accommodation." We would see things like that often. And what happens is people have filled out so many forms, done it so many times, they are so tired. And that is a form of trauma in a way. It's that they're triggered every time they have to do it again. Let's do another respite. Let's do another this. It's too much for them. So how can we make it easier for them? We can have an intake form that asks just the questions you need to know for your service that determine eligibility, so that if you've wasted their time, it's only 5 minutes of it. And I will even tell you, when I had to do I had to step in and help my brother and his wife, because they're just, I'd say incapable, maybe mentally, of onboarding him to the NDIS, their son. And when I started applying to support coordinators for support, because I couldn't do it myself being his auntie, when I started interviewing support coordination companies, they would send me 5-page documents. And by the second one, I was already back in, oh my God, I've done all this before. And even me, I'm a really staunch, healthy, resilient person. And even after the second one of them, I was done. I was like, this got to stop. That information was simply not necessary. So it's very unkind to make people do more than they actually need to do. So we've got intake forms. So we've talked about the nuance in the name there, Ritu. Agreement, consent, support plan, absolutely. So a service agreement, consent, support plan, risk assessment, personalized disaster and emergency management plan, no matter what service it is, onboarding checklist. If your registration audit June 2025, if your re-registration audit is June 2025, when should you book your re-registration audit? Sorry, I missed that. Did you say before the registration expires? Yeah, so because it's re-registration, you don't have the luxury of just automatically going, you know what, I'll just book my audit by the time that date. Let's just say it's 26th of June. I'll just make sure my audit is booked by the 26th of June. You have that luxury when it's a midterm. But when it's re-registration, your registration actually expires on the 26th of June. So what you can do is ask permission for an extension if you want, and you simply, if you've got no issues, and you probably don't, you do your own internal audits anyway. If you don't, then you can just make sure it's booked in before that 26th of June. As well, it can be completed. It's sensible to do it 6 months before. it's sensible, but there's nothing saying that you have to. Because by the time the 26th of June rolls around, your audit will be pending in the commission system. Make sense? Yeah, so when there is a behavior, when the client has a support plan, a behavior support plan, that is an absolutely necessary thing. Sometimes we've seen people who have got expired behavior support plans. A CHAP is absolutely necessary. Client profile summary, not necessarily, because it could fit under the category of assessment, but I get what you're saying. Nutrition and swallowing checklist, absolutely. You're talking my language, Brody. Nutrition care plan, not necessarily, but if it's specific to your person, it could actually be under the nutrition and swallowing checklist. If they've got epilepsy, you betcha. Hospital support plan, only if it's applicable. Risk assessment, absolutely. Oral health plan, if you have the care of that person either 24/7 or you have the care of that person's personal care more than for the majority of days of the week, then it, as a moral imperative, it falls on you to make sure that their oral health is taken care of. Well, I need to remind you that without teeth, we cannot get nutrition. That teeth and gums, because teeth aren't, teeth and gums will create the most amount of infection and chronic health. People in pain or exhibiting behaviors of concern who don't have a lot of verbal skills or maybe have dementia will often be experiencing oral pain. Okay, so yeah, it's really important. Optical reviews, PEEPs, yep, consent to administer routine exchange. Well done. Oh, here's an A student. No, very, very good. And if you want to say, okay, well, how do I collapse that all into something? Well, that's why we made a participant onboarding, because I like systems and I like charts and things to follow, and I wanted people to be able to follow things. I could just remember where I'm going. We have our participant onboarding process, and within that, every form that you see in there is necessary. There isn't any kind of additional frills in there. You may have a form with a different name. That's okay. I've tried to use the most standards, relatable language, but all of these are necessary. Okay. Now, we've also got to remember, people go, oh, how can I do all that for someone I'm just doing 2 hours a week with? That's okay. That's where proportionality comes in. Your chap is going to look very, very different to the chap of a person who has 7 days personal care or who's in supported independent living, for whom you have their life in your hands. Yeah. So proportionality, I want you to always remember proportionality. It doesn't mean you get to cut corners. It does mean that you weigh up and assess things based on proportionality. Yeah. How often you see them, whether you have high intensity, whether they're really nonverbal. I mean, that takes critical reasoning. And that's why when I start talking that's why I say, how can we let anyone into this market and just let people's lives go into other people's hands when there's so little criteria to be met? I'm just going to read some messages. Seems like there's 5 new. Oh, everyone, you've been so participatory. Thank you. You're just participating beautifully. The CHAP is mandatory, yes, but proportionality comes into that. Okay. We use our CMS to monitor client compliance, but in the background, we have formatted Excel spreadsheets for each client that automatically change. I love that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really, really good. So we do in our Excel, it also can change color when it's approaching, when the date's approaching. So we've got that factored in, but we haven't really gone to any trouble of making any more in that Excel spreadsheet, just because, you know, we are so close to releasing the software. But we know that CMS Excel will continue to be a product for people who are not ready for a software. And, you know, so we're really happy with that. So look, everyone, you've asked some fabulous questions. So in that document there, you can see exactly which documents are mandatory. Yeah, it saves you going through. And if you've written that down, good on you. You know, you'll have it to take away with you. There's one new message here. Oh, care diary. Okay, I've heard of that. Oh, that's fantastic. Now, when you say is chat mandatory, it's not mandatory for verification clients. It's not mandatory for domestic assistance. That's proportionality. If all you do is domestic assistance, it's not mandatory. Yeah. But if you did domestic assistance in terms of, let's look at the two different ways that can be done. Let's say you do domestic assistance and all you do is go in there and do it, and that's the agreement. No. But if you do domestic assistance and it's about teaching and developing life skills, different. You have to start looking at that differently. There's a doing it for people, because that's the agreement, and then there's showing somebody and building their independence. So just remember, it's not black and white. There are areas of grey. There are some black and whites, but there's a requirement to think critically about many things. And, you know, when you're unsure, you can always ask someone. And then we come down to, so participant stuff is really important. So is staff, but participant stuff is really important. And the most important element for many of these things is the dates. When are you going to look at it again? Because to see that things haven't been updated is heartbreaking. We must keep things updated and be having our eye across everything that's going on. There's one really interesting document here which came out. I brought it in with COVID, when COVID happened, and there was this requirement to know who was the most important people, because everyone's staff were going down with COVID. If you remember, workforces were under such stress. So I'm just looking for
Number 7.
Thank you. Oh, no, that's the disaster response, isn't it? Which one's the...
Is that the list of people you're looking for?
No. Oh, well, that's one thing. No, but no, the one that automatically shows you their priority.
Oh, that's the client prioritization. That's down. 25.
There. Thank you. So this is a really good one for when you have got quite a few clients. It actually auto-populates into the support plan. So like if I write Jane Doe here, Jane Doe will appear in the support plan once. I only have to write it once. And so you can put the suburb, are there any critical risks, i.e., is there no, this came out because of Anne-Marie Smith, basically. Okay, this is one of the reasons. Is there any other family support? Yes or no? Can they care for themselves for 24 hours at a time? Yes or no? You can see yes goes red. I use traffic lights, so amber, green, and red. Do they have any high intensity personal activities, daily, weekly, etc.? It colors according to that. So daily means, oh yeah, that's really acute. And weekly meaning, yeah, you know, okay, that takes a bit of the risk away. Do they have, you know, meals, personal care, etc.? You get a picture based on the colors on who are your highest risk clients, you know. And I think it should probably be called the Anne-Marie client service prioritization, because a whole lot went wrong there, didn't it? Brody, I think we've already read that one. Yeah, Monica, your automated CMS. I know, we're so excited about it. It's just been so long in the coming, but we'll get there. So I think we just come down to risk management now. Now, in relation to your risk management, you need one centralized source of truth for risk, not participant risk individually, not staff individually, but corporate, means the actual bird's eye view. You need this holistic corporate view, corporate risk register. So that means it's got to be somewhere. So if you had all the other things managed beautifully and perfectly, and you went to audit and you didn't have a corporate risk register system or something with a bird's eye view, then you would get a major non-conformity, because that would be a system that was not working. Okay. So essentially you need something that captures different categories. So here's where you define the categories, and the categories are defined based on the NDIS standards. So you've got emergency disaster, SIL. You've got client related. So when we do client related, we're not doing Betty has broken her leg and is not allowed to, mobilize for, 7 days or something like that. That's participant risk. We're doing an aggregated client related risk. Yeah. So that might be that something like this, which is often the case, that staff neglect to do participant risk assessments. Okay. Or staff neglect to put the participant risk assessment dates for review into a reminder system. They're the aggregated view of client risk, okay, as opposed to the granular one, which is what we saw in the participant risk register, what we see in the risk assessments. So compliance in general, there could be many things. I mean, if you've got particular things you want me to give you examples of, please do. But here's what I say, that if you couldn't come up with at least 2 of every one of these things, except if you don't do SIL, clearly you don't have to write about SIL. Yeah. If you couldn't come up with 2 of all of these, then there's a problem. Okay. Now, once people start, 95% of the time, Ali would agree, we find that they just go for gold and they come up with some of the best stuff. Yeah. It's like pulling teeth for yourself in the beginning if you're not used to it, but you will get the picture. And when you start thinking that way, you are on your way to being a better manager, owner, service provider. Yeah. Start to see risk in everything. If you're in any way an anxious person, you'll make a great risk person. I channel my anxiety into my risk and compliance. It's easy to see risk everywhere for some people once you get used to it. But yeah, I mean, that's my job, is to see risk, isn't it? And try to mitigate it. It always has been for a long time. So it's a really good thing to know how to do. So, if you want to step outside of these categories, we welcome that, but we have to give you some categories. Otherwise, people don't know where to stop. So, if you've got one of these, use it. If you've got something similar, use it. But this is your managing of risk. So this is your corporate managing of risk. Remember, we've got those granular areas underneath, which are, we're also managing risk by using our HR matrix, aren't we? The HR matrix is all about managing the risk. So, one of your corporate risks could be people not managing the HR mandatory requirements for their staff. So that might be that you yourself or a staff member is tasked with keeping all of this up to date and checking documents. So one of your corporate risks could be that this isn't done. And then that brings to your mind, it's all about bringing into your awareness the idea that, oh, could that happen? Could somebody not do that? Oh, you bet $1 million someone could do that. It happens all the time. How many times have we gone to audit where people have said, but that was such and such's job. They told me they were doing it. And say, oh, did they? Okay. Well, they didn't. So, oh, well, it's their fault then. I said, well, that's not going to help you now. So in actual fact, it's actually, sure, they didn't do their job, but who's responsible for that? They are. If you're the manager, if you're the owner, if you're the top of the tree, unfortunately, you're responsible for it. So sure, they weren't a good person and they took their money every week for however long and didn't do the compliance they said they were. I don't see it so much as a dual responsibility, because that is putting a responsibility onto someone that you cannot change. I take the responsibility myself. If it isn't happening, it is because I didn't monitor it. And if people have different views, like I have a colleague who thinks that's a dual responsibility. There's no the answer for me is, did I watch it and did I not monitor it? And I am quite happy with the responsibility lying with me. Or, from a governance perspective. So, yeah, so we were risk. So we've got all the aspects of risks, but even all those little things that we know touched on risk in here, like, participant risk and disaster and response, etc. They're all the granular, and your corporate risk register captures the high level helicopter view of those things, which might actually point out to you that for compliance, what is my compliance officer doing on a weekly basis? You'd be like, my compliance officer slacks off, okay, now we're aware of that. Maybe that woman didn't think that anyone would do that to her. And I can promise you they do. People do. I had a project officer once. She was an auditor. We met at an audit years ago, and I gave her some work getting this organization that I was working for registered for NDIS. 3 weeks went past. We were wondering what she'd been doing, and turned out nothing. And but that was on me. Where was my? I mean, I could say, I didn't think I'd have to. She's a quality auditor. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't really help. It was on me. I wasn't project managing her. So, lesson learned. Very disappointed I was, but and I don't talk to her anymore. But let's just go back over these last few comments. If the participant is in the habit of taking off his toenail, which leads to bleeding, parent is fully aware and gave the information in writing, this reportable incident because of the cause bleeding. It's a reportable incident when it causes harm. So if it's harm, then yeah. And an incident is a way of having a log of what happens and being able to show evidence that, look, this is a problem, need you to help with it, instead of just saying, this is happening all the time. It's documented in their file. We have incidents to document that and give it more weight. So yeah, and it brings it very much into everybody's awareness and the governance of the organisation going forward about developing systems to assist with that. Brody, the determination depends on the severity and impact of the incident, perhaps further learning on what mandates reportable incident. Yeah, it's not a reportable incident, quite possibly, but it could be if it's, because there's a behaviour of concern there, isn't there? So for now, perhaps you would do, the only thing that a reportable incident helps with is getting things cracking. you know, putting some weight and heaviness onto the whether it's the system of the commission, the Office of the Senior Practitioner, to hurry up and finish that, or to get that provider to get that behaviour support provider in as quickly as possible. But also, surely they've given an interim, you know, like they must have given an interim behaviour support plan. But if it hasn't, these things help to get action, basically. So yeah, it's definitely an incident. Okay, so I think we've covered off on all the areas I wanted to cover off on in terms of the agenda. And so if anyone has any questions they might like to ask, I'm all ears. Although I understand we've had a lot of questions throughout the whole. No problem, Sharon. Thank you. Remember, you know, like if you're really trying to make someone sit up and listen, incidents are good for that. Thanks, Brady. Thanks, Imran. If I have time, what do you want, Imran?
Is above demonstrate the support plan review register.
Support plan review. Okay. Whereabouts it'll be here somewhere, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Alrighty. So name, Jane Doe. Date that I'm writing it, 20th of the 12th, 2024. What date is on the support plan? So I'll go to my support plan. I'll go, oh, this plan came out. This support plan is dated the 20th of the 6th, 2024. So my support plan is due, because I've written mine on the 20th of the 12th, right? This is their NDIS one. I've written mine on the, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, date today, support plan date, yeah, 20th of the 6th. No, what we'll do is here. So we're going to write it on the same date that we're doing it, 2024. So it's due for review. When do you think, according to the standards, Imran, when do you think that this support plan is due for review by me? As the standards require.
At least once a year, but as needed.
Yeah, well done. So it's due 20th of the 12th, 2025, unless something happens in between that. So it's in 365 days. Now, then what we would want you to do is to put when you've reviewed it, okay? So if I were to say, I've reviewed it on the 20th of the 12th, 20, I don't think will it be able to, does it have a time issue, Ali? Do you think it'll not be able to accept if I put a date in the future?
No.
Oh, no, there you go. So there we are. It's the 20th of the 12th, 25, time taken beyond the due date, nothing. But let's say I forget and oh, holy hell, I didn't get it done until 2026. Wow, it's minus 365 days. So once again, using traffic light, which is red, you know, we use color to alert people to take notice of something. So that's how that one works. Does that make more sense, Imran?
Yeah, great.
Good-o. Okay. how do you manage all the due and expired dates in multiple sheets? How do you manage all of the due and expired dates in? Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So we would want you to. So my advice to people is that someone needs to be looking at this once a week, and my best operators, as in provider clients, my best operators, the ones that do well, are looking at this, some weekly, others who are quality managers for organizations daily. They kind of live in and out of it. And so those dates would be very, very infrequently falling overdue.
Can I ask a question, Jen?
Yeah, that might not be your question though.
It is sort of close. I mean, this is not a this is a manual spreadsheet you're using here. You've got multiple tabs, multiple criteria, multiple documents. So is someone visually viewing this every single day or every week?
Some are, yeah.
It's not collected in one summary sheet or something like that. Because there's a lot of things depending on obviously what services you're delivering.
Yeah, there are. There are.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we built a software. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been more than better than nothing. And there is no software out there. In fact, I've had how many software providers have come to our webinars, Ali, and asked if we'd partner with them.
Quite a few.
Because there is no governance, risk, and compliance tool that does this. If you follow this, your audit is a breeze. Your service delivery would also be much improved. But none of the softwares have been able to replicate this. So that's why we've built the software to do it. So it will be a lot more, well, the softwares are a little more automated, and you can see
I mean, this
things
is
at
better
once.
than nothing.
It is,
So,
yeah.
And in the details you send out after this meeting, is there a purchase price for this if you want to buy this?
Yeah, and we've also got this 40% off thing until the 7th of Jan for
excellent.
Christmas. Yeah, and so if you get this and you really like it and you want to sign up for a demo on the software, we're super excited about it. So
thank you.
Yeah. People love this, and I love it too. So
it's been a great session. Thanks.
I hope so. I really hope that I really hope that people have understood the different types of audits, what and how to find out what it is that they need to do, and also, try and stick up for yourselves with these auditors and hold them to account as well. Some of them are doing things with people that they shouldn't be doing, and I don't find that very fair. So yeah, anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Great, informative. Thank you so much everyone for coming. And look, absolutely have a fabulous Christmas or Christmas break, whichever it is that you enjoy. And we look forward to maybe seeing you again in the new year. Did we answer this one? If one completes a fire safety training using the LMS, can this person be applied? Yeah, absolutely. You can, warden is a really heavy duty word. Well, it really is, it is really just the person who has experience and will take responsibility for making sure everyone's out. But yeah, just give them the training on the LMS. Non-billable hours versus FTE to ensure compliance. What's that mean? Bianca, you got a question? Is she still here?
Yeah, I am. What I mean is,
I know what you mean. You want to try and figure out how you can hold someone to the billable hours that you've set for them.
Yeah, or what is reasonable? Because certainly to ensure compliance, you're needing quite a bit of full-time hours.
You're talking about support coordination?
No. I'm talking about administrative hours, such as in our quality and compliance team. So overseeing all documentation done by support workers, ensuring that incident reports are populated correctly. Anything that could have possibly been missed is generated, and that then is trickled down to training of the staff. How did they miss this? Or just really the gap analysis and ensuring compliance. What is reasonable?
Yeah, okay. So it's going to depend on the person. So me and a few of my, auditor colleagues of long term, we know that we could do that in a couple of hours a week. But it's going to, but what happens is when we go, oh, you're a good support worker. Do you want to be my quality manager? They're going to take a while. So it's about the quality and capability of the person that you give that task to as to how long that will take. I think that automatically going, I'm going to get a quality manager, put them on full time, you're asking for them to waste time. That's going to happen. If you try to get someone who's just a few hours a week and you have governance around that, like I expect this, this, and this, check out how long they take to do those tasks. Because you can pretty much be sure that if you give someone like a 35-hour a week, they're probably going to, not all people, a lot of people are going to waste 15 hours of that. That's overkill, really. I mean, you'd have to have other things for people to do that. So I would start thinking about how you can either get someone super experienced and just give them a couple of hours a week and see what happens and how it matches up, then you'll get value for money. Or else take someone and say, could you do X, Y, Z a couple of hours a week? And just check out what they are able to achieve, because the more experienced the person, the more they're going to be able to achieve.
Yeah.
And then you won't be wasting money willy-nilly. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just see so many people appoint Uncle Sam, Uncle Joe, or whoever it is that's doing it, that's a support worker, as their quality manager, and it's like, and now you're asking me why your compliance system isn't up to date? Like, it's sort of like 2 + 2. You've got to not look for the closest thing to you. You've got to look for the right hire, the right person. And, paying someone, I don't know, $60 or $70 an hour for a couple of hours, which would be more than equivalent to the other person doing 15. It's going to work out better. Have I designed an employee handbook? No, and we're not going to, because everybody should design their own. There are your workplace is different to the next workplace, which is different to the next. So you do not have to have one. Your auditor might say in the list of things that you can give them, employee handbook. You don't have to have one. That's just a suggestion. Nobody can make you have an employee handbook ever. But also, it needs to be something that's yours. Like people walking around with employee handbooks that have nothing to do with the service that their organization is, just seems ludicrous to me. What you could do is take a majority of your policies, not all of them, and just make that into a handbook, and or you could just write a page or a couple of pages. I mean, it's not like you're running an enormous SIL business that has a lot of things to think about. So I think give it some thought and make it an actual useful non-generic employee handbook. No problem, Imran. Thanks, everybody. Have a great break.